F1 is a sport where three things do most of the talking. Points talk, money talks, and Helmut Marko just won't stop talking, no matter how much Red Bull want him to do so. In all seriousness, when an incident takes a toll on the points total and the finances of the team, especially in a cost cap era where every position in the championships makes all of the difference, then it can't simply be swept under the rug. This is especially true when the incident is as high profile as the recent self-inflicted misery that befell Mercedes in Qatar. The previous tension could be excused from within, but the levy seemed to break in the Middle East, costing the team valuable points that can make all of the difference in their fight with Ferrari and Perez. If Mercedes wants to secure the second spot in the Mortal Championships, as let's be honest, Max is in a realm of his own and will likely not even need Perez's points by the end of the season in the constructors, as his points total already dwarfs that of the Brackley team, then something needs to be done and fast. Want to know if we should be taking the reported issues within Mercedes seriously? Often when there's smoke there's fire, but then again, we could just be smelling an Alpine power unit. And stick around to find out what Toto's plans are to steady the ship, as the return of the Mercedes talismanic team principal could not have come at a better time. In case you've been sleeping under 100 rocks, you'll be aware by now the Mercedes have been struggling for form over the past couple of seasons, with tension rising in the team as the drivers duke it out to stake their claim for top dog in anticipation for the form returning next season. The pressure seemed to be mounting, eventually reaching its zenith in Qatar. An intra-team crash is one of the worst things that can befall a team in any motorsport, but when you're already under pressure from underperforming and while still recovering from a sharp fall from grace, having previously been one of the sport's most dominant teams to ever grace the track, then it could prove fatal to morale, budget, and championship positioning. Let's be clear, if Hamilton loses out on the second spot in the Drivers' Championship, then it will be due to his own doing, having taken full responsibility for the crash over the weekend. Now, of course, nobody would want to kick Mercedes while it's down, right? No blonde ex-F1 championship winning pundit would possibly want to rub salt into the wound and stir the pot more in order to create a mini-me within the team that he left, due in no small part to not being able to cope with the pressure himself, culminating in a shocking lap 1 crash with his teammate. Surely not. Well, in stepped Nico Rosberg, who while talking on Sky Sports F1 podcast, gave a brief overview of the current landscape that the team faces, saying, "Things have been heating up there, because also in Suzuka, it was like well over the limit on one occasion when they both took each other off the track. So it's interesting to follow. I hope that Toto is managing that carefully, because you've got to be ahead of the curve there and not let that spiral." So far, a very perceptive and even approach. Where's the salt rubbing, I hear you ask? Well, perhaps we should hear Nico's advice to George, as he seemed to suggest everything short of blonde hair dye in order to emulate the tension levels not seen in Mercedes since the 2016 season, going on to say, "It's a very difficult situation for George as well, because unfortunately, you can't just be the nice guy in that situation. You have to also internally keep the pressure on. You have to make it difficult for the team. Unfortunately, it sucks, but otherwise the team is just going to take the easiest route. So it's very uncomfortable because George needs to be pushing, which he does on the radio. You hear him saying again and things like that. He's really trying to hold against it." So what can be done about this? If the tension is not addressed and the issues squashed, then it will surely result in the team being in disarray, with the garages divided. First a crash, then a couple, then a few, and soon enough the team's turmoil will result in something reminiscent of a Mansell-Prost feud, or even an Arnoux-Prost feud, or perhaps as far as a Senna-Prost feud. Come to think of it, that man really had a way with teammates, if only he was good at managing F1 teams as he was at pissing off colleagues, eh? Well, as I'm sure everyone is aware, there has been a German fridge-shaped hole in the F1 paddock as of late, with Toto Wolff being on speed dial the past couple of races as he recovers from knee surgery. My knees would hurt too after years of holding up this team. His return to the paddock in the USA won't be all gravy and biscuits, however, as he will now be working to patch together the relations within the team and get the drivers back to being fully focused. Part-time Britney Spears impressionist Nico Rosberg seems to agree that Toto will be the one to restore the balance within the team, having this to say about Toto's return. Toto is the only person there that can manage that. He's the only person that has the authority and the respect to handle that. He's the right guy to handle it. No one else can force them to sit down and have a discussion and hit the table. I think it will be very good for Toto to be back at the racetrack. So just why is Wolff the right man for the job? Well, Rosberg went on to give some insight as to what Wolff will do, likely from his own experience in how the Austrian deals with conflict within the team, going on to say, what Toto can do when they are back in Monaco on the Monday after Qatar, maybe he would have sat down with both or go visit Lewis in his apartment and have a sit down with George. Individually first, and then ideally you'd also sit them down together. Interestingly, Wolff actually insists that the lessons have already been learned without his intervention, believing it to be pretty self-explanatory as a situation. The team comes first, end of. Until they can be competing for championships, there is no need to jeopardize the team's standing in the constructors, which will be vital for continued funding due to the vast difference in prize money between the positions. Speaking on his view of what happened in his absence, Wolff said, "The last round in Qatar was a case of what might have been. As a team, you never want to see your cars collide. It was frustrating to leave a lot of points on the table, particularly as the pace of the car was strong. It was encouraging though to see how the drivers and the team reacted. Both Lewis and George know the team comes first and do not ever intend to jeopardize that. I'm sure we will all grow from this moment. We're now focused on Austin and making sure we get the most out of each upcoming weekend." Wolff won't be alone in this venture, with other strong figures in the team like James Allison also providing insight as to what the drivers will be told in order to quell their feud, with one particular point of interest being to recognize split strategy decisions. It could be argued that starting Hamilton on the far more aggressive soft tyre in Qatar was the match that sparked the explosive engagement at turn 1, as it gave Hamilton more grip off the line while starting directly behind his teammate in third. This gave him the onus to attack on the first corner and get past as soon as possible in order to capitalize on the different strategy, with an aim to apply pressure to Red Bull from two fronts, as well as keeping the other challengers from Ferrari, McLaren and Aston Martin at bay, rather than taking a more even-handed approach to maintain second and third. Speaking about the strategy decisions and how they need to be better capitalized on moving forward, Allison had this to say. "I think both drivers understood that they were on different tyres, understood that Lewis was likely to be more sparkly in the opening laps of the race, and I think George had acknowledged that neither of them should lose time if that were the case. But both were also very keen to emphasize the fact that they shouldn't have it coming together. Now, I don't think that was discussed in the specific context of turn 1, lap 1, but just generally the opening laps would be where the soft would be at its best. So no point fighting when the strategies would bring all that back together in the race." So, given all of this, just how dire of a situation are Mercedes in? Was this all just a media pile-on, or are there legitimate reasons to be concerned moving forwards? In all honesty, we can't see either driver being pushed out of the team, so breaking point may be too strong of a term to use here. However, Mercedes now need to demonstrate through the rest of the season that they are able to enact damage limitation and pull the reins on their drivers in order to have them act on behalf of the greater good, which is finishing second in both championships. Perhaps the most crucial thing that has saved Mercedes from being in a real dire state of affairs is Hamilton backing down upon seeing the replay of the incident with George, immediately cooling off some of the heat that was adding to the pressure, which begs the question as to why they allowed him to speak to the media before being fully informed of the situation, and whether that would have been the case had Toto been present. However, if the next incident isn't quite as one-sided in blame and more terrible in outcome, then just how long is it until we witness the second Silver Arrow Civil War? Thank you for watching.